Are live. Welcome to Training Day Thoughts film, not the TV show. Haven't watched that one. If you don't care about these disclaimers, I try to keep them short and relevant, but your mileage may vary. You can skip right ahead to the first section via the description box. This video contains spoilers, and let's see. Yeah, as said, I have not watched the TV show. I don't currently have plans to do so. Now, let's see. Yeah, sometimes I talk about whether or not you can go blind into a movie. I mean, really, the only thing you need to be able to follow this movie is you need to know some basic stuff about the LA gang environment and slang from that environment. Yeah. It is possible I'm going to swear in this video and talk about, you know, some of the other material that got it, the age rating that it got. And let's see. This is not structured as an yeah, technically this isn't a review. It's a series of, well, thoughts. Some of it is analysis, some of it is jokes, etc. Thoughts I had while watching, those are in chronological order, as well as before watching. Those are separated into the first two sections, time codes in the description box. And in the final section, I get into stuff I think is worthwhile to get into on Rotten Tomatoes, Metacritic, IMDb, and Wikipedia. And before recording this vlog, I had read all of it, though I may have forgotten some of what I had read by the time of recording. And if you're not interested in the contents of all three sections, I invite you to only watch the ones you are interested in. And this video is not me saying that I'm smarter than you, or know more or know better than you. The stuff I say in this video, I'm not saying only I could or have thought of. It's just stuff I want to talk about and think others would enjoy listening to. I made this video discuss an issue that doesn't affect me or doesn't affect me as much as it does certain minorities. I'm not trying to lecture those that it affects. In part, I'm speaking to others who are not in those minorities so we can better empathize with those minorities. And in part, I'm expressing my interpretation of the material without claiming it's as valid as the interpretation of the members of the minorities. And let's see. I define a good movie as one where the good outweighs the bad, and vice versa for a bad movie. This can mean that a movie otherwise mostly good or bad, I actually overall consider actually bad or good. This particular movie, I would say overall is good, but it definitely does have some problems, some of which others have gone into, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about. There are a lot of separate issues with the ending. You know, the last little chunk, basically from when, yeah, I guess the first one would be when Jake hands over his gun to, yeah, to criminals, you know, to people who aren't fellow cops. That from there on and right up until the, you know, the very ending with Alonso getting shot, there are various things that are hard to believe, and yeah, various things like that. But I would say sometimes a bad ending can really kill a good movie. I don't think the ending is bad enough to do that, and some elements of the ending are good. I got this movie on sale, so anything negative I say in this video is not out of bitterness. I watched YouTube videos and special features on the DVD before doing this video. I first watched this in the year 2001, not long after it came out, and have watched it one or two times in the years since, and then one more time, you know, very, like, 15 minutes ago, I guess. And let's see. I'm not sure I'm gonna criticize the violence in this movie, but just yeah, just in case I do, I want to say I don't have a problem with violence and gore in general. The Thing is one of my favorite horror movies and movies in general, and I also love Cronenberg's The Fly. Also don't have a problem with film sexuality, nudity, disturbing, and upsetting material in general, as Monster is one of my favorite movies. So, my own quote-unquote film critic rating for this is an 8 out of 10, and my personal rating is also an 8 out of 10. Personally, overall, I do love Street Kings more than this, more than I love this movie, but they are both excellent movies. Right, that takes us to the first section, which is called Notes Taken While Watching. I appreciate that for a movie that is so intense and covers such dark material, dark subject matter, opens in such a serene way. And literally the first thing we see of his wife is her breastfeeding their baby. So, you know, the more than anything, we think of her as a mother and wife, you know. And let's see, there's another thing I was going to say. And really, the only thing we do see is, you know, she is a supportive wife. There's no hint of conflict between them. The conflict comes from the rest of the world when he, you know, the both the areas that he tries to stop criminals in, criminals themselves, and the world of the dirty cops. You know, so basically he is leaving this safe place, and you know, whenever someone, you know, yeah, he knows that at least some of it is going to be dangerous, and he spells out why. He, you know, I forget the exact wording, but he says something along the lines of, "You should see the houses they live in." You know, he's ambitious. He wants to go beyond where he is, even if that means going outside of the safe, you know. And Jake clearly does not like that Alonzo is making, you know, Jake's wife giggle. And Alonzo says over the phone, "We'll be in the office all day." And, you know, not long after he says that, we realize, you know, we're told that the car is the office. And Alonzo hangs up the phone the moment that Jake starts talking about how lucky he is to have Alonzo training him. Jake is so uncomfortable trying to be quiet while Alonzo reads the paper. "So you entertain me." "No, Denzel, I'm pretty sure you're the one entertaining all of us. He is incredible in this movie." Right from the start, Alonzo is simultaneously threatening and charming. And literally the moment that Alonzo leaves you know, he walks out of the diner and he immediately starts breaking law by just crossing the street, you know, right there in the middle of the street. He's not like, what are they called again? Crosswalk. He's not looking for the crosswalk, and he's not respecting that there are drivers out there, you know. The drivers take one look at him and know not to mess with him. You know, there's that one driver who, you know, when Alonzo just parks the car and points a gun at Jake to get him to smoke the weed. You know, there's one driver who dares honk at him, and Alonzo points the gun at him. Right, but why do you want to be a narc? They've been together for just a few minutes, but Alonzo has already called him on BS twice now. You know, Jake keeps basically saying the thing that he is supposed to be saying. You know, he's going by the book, and the you know, Alonzo keeps, you know, he knows that that's not what Jake actually thinks. And Jake doesn't want to talk about his family. It's one of the first things he straight up says no to Alonzo on something. And really, it's one of the only things where he never actually comes around on it. I mean, even like Roger, eventually he does seem to like accept, well, I guess, yeah, yeah, because yeah, Alonso gives him an out and he doesn't take it. So the almost the only thing that he never budges on is not talking about the family. When Jake was talking about the DUI stop, Alonso genuinely did seem interested and entertained, but then afterwards he reveals really he's just waiting for things to be about Debbie, or like he's the thing that he's actually entertained by is the fact that with all of the like he says, I can't believe that you spent what was it, I forget, X amount of months with an attractive training officer, and the most interesting story you have is a DUI stop. And yeah, and they're about to stop the college kids, and he's about to I want to let's see, he's about to call for backup. Yeah, and the Alonso immediately says, I want to say rover, was that the word? Get off the rover. Jake keeps trying to follow protocol, and Alonso keeps telling him not to. And most of the time, Jake follows him. For a long chunk of the movie, he at most hesitates, but he always eventually does go along with what Alonso tells him. And Alonso tells him, in fact, a good narcotics agent should have narcotics in his blood. And we realize the only reason Alonso, the whole thing with stopping the college kids and grabbing the drugs from them was to make Jake smoke it. You know, that way, hypothetically, let's say that he had gotten some, he went to the evidence lockup and grabbed some drugs from there and made Jake smoke that. Well, why did he grab those drugs? Maybe at some point someone is going to ask questions about what he needed those drugs for, but if he confiscates them out in, the yeah, in this gang neighborhood, you know, most likely after Jake smoked it, Alonso, possibly he sold it to someone, maybe he just destroyed it and left it somewhere, something. He's not telling the LAPD that he got those drugs because then, that might, let's see, yeah, I don't know. Can they like test if someone has recently smoked it? And yeah, like yeah, I don't know if they could get saliva off it, but saliva has DNA in it, so they could, if they can get saliva off that thing and like match it. I don't know. I guess Jake probably isn't in the system for that. Or do they have of the cops too, or is it only criminals? I'm not 100% sure. Anyway, there could be some problems, but what's gonna like? Are these college kids gonna go to the LAPD and say, "Oh, hey, we were pulled over by this guy, and he's like"? Actually, technically, I'm not sure. Did Alonso even break any laws when doing, when grabbing the drugs from? I guess maybe he should have written it up. Also, I'm not entirely sure. They're not gonna go to the cops and say, "Hey, someone stopped us and we weren't written up about it." Hey teacher, you forgot to assign us homework. No, that's not going to happen. And, and about 15 minutes into the movie, Alonso pulls a gun on Jake. And Alonso straight up tells Jake, okay, sure, you're not going to smoke it. Get out. And Jake agrees to smoke it. Jake is so determined to impress Alonso to make detective that he agrees to smoke even after Alonso gives him an out. It's not actually that, hypothetically, he could have just pointed the gun at his face until he eventually smoked it, but he points the gun at him for, I don't know, I didn't count, maybe 10 seconds or something. Then he puts the gun away and he says, if you're not going to smoke it, actually, he doesn't even say if you're not, he says, fine, you're not going to smoke it, get out of my car, you're not a narc, you're not narc material, something like that. I love the POV of Jake when he's really high. Not all movies know how and when to use POV, but Jake is the audience surrogate, so it makes perfect sense, and we really do need to see just how affected he is. The fact that there's actually PCP in there is a pretty significant plot point. So, the movie needs to sell us on that he is that affected by it. I really love the line, it's not like I put a gun to your head. And they go to Roger's place. I like how Roger actually kind of treats Jake like he I feel like he doesn't treat him like he's new, especially. He kind of, he tries to, like, he talks to him, you know, yeah, in a nice, polite way, and all, you know, almost everyone gives Jake a really hard time, but Roger doesn't really come off as yeah. Anyway, but yeah, Roger tells Alonso, "I know you got a green light on you," and Alonso responds, I'm not worried." So the film immediately connects the fact that there's a hit on Alonso with the character of Roger, and Alonso immediately says that he's not worried. The reason, of course, is that he's already completely intending to betray Roger to deal with the situation, and that's why he's meeting with him at all, is to ask the question, to get an answer. What are you doing later? What are your plans for leaving the day? And he says, I'm gonna stay home. I'm gonna save some cheddar. And he's not gonna go out and spend all his money to, you know, yeah. If he leaves the house, and he's probably gonna go to an expensive place. So he's gonna stay home, save some cheddar, and now Alonso knows where to grab him. Although technically, doesn't that also mean, like, he only has until midnight to pay back the Russians? Like, what would he have done if Roger had said, I'm going out to a restaurant? He's not going to kill him in a restaurant. So there are a couple of things there that where Alonso seems a little bit to fly by the seat of his pants when, like, I don't know, I guess technically he knew the details of what he was going to do, but he didn't know exactly when all the pieces would fall into place. But leaving up to chance, I guess Roger is just the first one. If Roger had said, I'm going to a restaurant, Alonso would have gone to the next Roger, someone else who has a lot of money that the he and the others could take. And the let's see. Yeah, I guess that's supposed to be the idea. It legitimately is very impressive that Jake manages to spot the rape in his condition and with such a brief glance there. And Alonso lets Jake subdue both of the rapists. And once he's sent the girl away, he starts using violence against, I guess, only one of them. But, clearly it wasn't that he didn't want to use violence. He was testing Jake, seeing if he could take out the rapists himself. And yeah, Jake, after seeing Alonso just let the, not take in the rapists, Jake does legitimately start, he feels bad about that. As he says, this wasn't justice, it was street justice. And legitimately, like, when, he said, what, like, just let the animals kill each other, something like that, wipe each other out. And Alonzo just responds, God willing. He genuinely does seem to mean that. He genuinely seems to believe that hypothetically, the like, he doesn't have faith in the system anymore, basically, but he does still think that something bad should happen to these people. Let's see. I meant to make a note for this elsewhere, and since I didn't, I'm going to get into it now so I don't forget, even though I would normally save this for a later segment. I want to say it was an IMDb review. I believe an IMDb reviewer said that they took issue with the fact that when when Jake is about to be murdered in the bathtub, there's a cross on the wall, and I want to say above the door into the door back out of the bathroom, and there's like we know that there are women and children in this house. Like he said, get out of here, but still they were just there. You know, the fact that that was is basically juxtaposed against the these innocent and good things juxtaposed with this truly evil action of murdering a police officer. And I'm not sure if the reviewer used the word blasphemy, but I mean that is basically what the as far as I understand the they thought they very directly say they in their from their point of view it is wrong to depict that in a movie. I understand their perspective, but I think, like almost everything in the movie that is actually legitimately bad, I agree. Murder is a bad thing under all circumstances. But the fact that there are women and children so close by makes it even worse. And it's not exactly a very Christian thing to do, so the cross, and yeah. But like most other things in the movie, the reason it's there is that this is the sort of thing that really does, like, there are a lot of gang members and criminals in general who would call themselves Christian, who believe in the Christian God. And I do think that is worth actually, that doesn't mean that Christianity leads to, to being a criminal. It just, it, part of it is that everybody is the hero of their own story. Nobody believes that they're the bad guy. And yeah, I mean, to them, murder of innocence is as much a day-to-day, a part of daily life as Christianity is. And I, I would have issue with it if the movie suggested that Christians are bad people. But it's not. It's just saying that, yeah, some criminals, some murderers are Christian. They consider themselves Christian, So I respect their point of view, but I do disagree that it is, I don't think you should consider yourself a Christian if you're murdering people, if you're a criminal. But some people do, and I think it's important to show these things, in a honest way, and I think that's something this movie, that's something David Ayer movies tend to aim for. And occasionally he gets it wrong. There's a lot wrong with U57, 571 or 571. I'm not sure how you're supposed to pronounce it. But yeah, largely, these are. I sincerely doubt that the person who wrote that review is watching this video, but if they are, you probably don't want to watch Fury. I think that would really, you would absolutely hate the way that that one, like, yeah, if you don't think that it's okay to show innocence, so close to brutal violence, that movie is definitely not for you. Now, personally, I love it, but yeah. Anyway, and Jake confronts Alonzo, about the fact that they didn't book the two suspects. They have a legitimate argument, a verbal fight. Clearly, Alonzo was very offended. He still thinks he's one of the good guys. He says, "Oh, you don't think I put bad people away?" And he recites all these numbers about how many, you know, yeah, there are other things that Jake has said that was wrong to do, where Alonzo just, he doesn't really argue, but here, this is, you know, that actually does bother him, the idea that he might not be the good guy. And I like the detail that as soon as, I want to say the character name is Blue, the character played by Snoop Dogg, the moment that Snoop Dogg is inside the wig shop, he swallows what he has on him, where Jake can't see him. Now, and the Asian woman running the wig shop, or I don't know, I guess it's possible she's a clerk but doesn't run it. I just get the sense that she's running it. Clearly from the moment that Snoop Dogg enters, she is very upset. She knows that he's running away from the cops, and she is like yelling, trying to get them to leave, until Alonzo, we don't know what he says. I suppose it's possible some DVDs subtitle his line there. My DVD only subtitles the lines in English, not what he said to her, and not the little bit of Spanish he says to his. I I guess the kid's name is Aloncito, his kid with Eva Mendes character. The but yeah, he says something to her, and immediately she is, we don't see her, but she doesn't say anymore, so that must have calmed her down. I guess there's a chance it scared her, but it didn't seem like a threat the way he said it, but yeah. And I'm not certain, but it sounded like maybe Vietnamese to me, so he knows at least enough Vietnamese to say something that will calm her down. I can imagine there are a lot of Vietnamese people working, there, so he had to learn at least some. I really appreciate that, as episodic as a lot of this movie is, every single, every time they stop at a place and, you know, stop a crime in progress or something, all of it does add something. The college kids, you know, got Alonzo the weed laced with PCP, so he has something on Jake. The rapists get Jake the wallet that gets him out of the murder. Stopping Snoop Dogg gets them information on Sandman. Sandman's going to Sandman's place gets them money that gets them the warrant for Roger from the Three Wise Men, which gets Alonso the money, which is supposed to pay off the Russians. And the fact that they face off against each other at Eva Mendes' place there at the end, Alonso went there to be with her before he goes to pay the Russians. But the reason there's a scene there in the movie is that Jake manages to get the money away from him, and that then leads to him getting killed by the Russians. And I don't remember her name, but Macy Gray's character immediately starts poking holes in their story the moment that Alonso leaves the room. She knows not to mess with him, but she can tell that Jake is more susceptible. So she points out she should get a copy of the warrant. She points out, where's your backup? She calls them out for being crooked. She can tell that there's something wrong. You get the sense she's dealt with police before, and she's picked up on what she has coming to her. What are her rights in this situation? And Jake tries to make Dimitri more comfortable. It doesn't really work. And Macy Gray's character keeps pushing about the warrant. So, they leave quickly knowing that she'll realize it, and once she realizes they don't actually have a warrant for that place, she sees that they got the money, and then she tries to get them. She yells out, stop them, to the guys outside. Let's see. And that is one thing where, like, I don't know, maybe I'm misreading Alonso's character. Maybe, I guess he does fly by, just, he makes a lot of rash decisions. It's just that usually they work out. Occasionally, he overestimates his, like, how much in control, how, let's see, how do you phrase that? Whether or not he's in control of some of these situations, but them getting shot at, like that, yeah, I mean, hypothetically, let's say, if, I don't know, I guess I just feel like he should have seen that coming. It wasn't the first thing she did to, like, she keeps, poking holes in their story. I don't know, maybe he's not really paying attention while he's in there looking for the money. I don't know. And Jake points out, he shouldn't have opened fire in a neighborhood like that. And Alonso tells him if he's too scared, maybe he shouldn't be in narcotics. You got to figure out if you're a wolf or a sheep. Again, Alonso gives Jake an out, testing him, challenging him. It's only when he refuses to take Roger's money that Alonso says that he could frame Jake, even though he has had that option from like 15 minutes into the movie. Jake keeps saying that this is wrong, this is wrong, and Alonso is more likely to tell him fine, then leave, than he is to tell him, if you leave and snitch on me, I'll tell them to do a drug test. Excellent filming and editing on the gang neighborhood when they're driving through. And right before leaving Eva Mendes' house, Alonso does legitimately seem to care about his son with Eva Mendes. Jake isn't in the room anymore. It's not for show for him. I like the detail that Alonso gives Jake some eye drops of the the three wise men and the other people in the restaurant can't tell that he's, you know, done drugs. While I do think there should be a law against giving Tom Berenger such a tiny role in your film, I do feel like this movie should get a pass on it, but most movies should not. Just, yeah. Give him credit. He worked the system. He deserves his freedom. You know, Alonzo, I don't think the three wise men really agree with that, but Alonzo is so comfortable with that perspective that sometimes he forgets that not everybody sees it that way. And we again have some talk about the Russians, and Alonso explains to the three wise men what he's going to do about them. Yeah, the reason Alonso goes to Eva Mendes' house is obviously to have sex with her, but the story reason, the reason the scene is in the movie, is so Jake knows where to go after he's nearly murdered. I really appreciate that a lot of characters in the movie react differently to Alonso than they do to Jake. This isn't just someone facing down a cop. Everybody knows Alonso is a dirty cop, and it's easy to tell that Jake is new and isn't dirty, at least not yet. And Paul immediately dislikes Jake. And Roger was hiding a gun in the newspaper he was reading, and he actually, like, I forget exactly who it is, but someone is like counting down, you know, 5, 4, 3, and Roger starts mocking them and counting along with them. He's so, excuse me, he's so certain that things are not gonna go badly for him, and he assumes that Alonso isn't with them. He can barely believe that Alonso is going against him, and like even the you know, right up until right before he's shot, like Jake, Roger and Jake do not believe that, you know, like obviously Jake isn't willing to shoot Roger, but then Alonzo grabs the shotgun and shoots him instead, which Jake didn't think was going to happen either. Dr. Dre is super intense in this movie. Nice touch of the, like, you see a cigarette butt be like thrown on the floor, and then like someone steps on it, and we see that there's like, I don't know, 5 cigarette butts total, you know, denoting they've been digging for a long time and that it's been stressful. You know, it's been a long time because nobody smokes, you know, like hypothetically, even if all of them started smoking at the same time, you know, I would not think that you would smoke and dig at the same time. You probably don't want to, you know, it's too, like, I think doing both at the same time would be too, like, it would be uncomfortable because you know, your lungs, you have to take in a lot of air to be digging effectively. You have to be able to breathe comfortably, normally. And let's see. So the people who've been digging most likely haven't been smoking. So several of those cigarette butts were smoked by the same person, or cigarettes that were smoked by the same person. So it's been a long time. Even, no matter how stressful, you do not smoke that many cigarettes in an extremely short amount of time. But also, they're smoking cigarettes because it is this stressful situation. You know, like hypothetically, if someone showed up to go into Roger's place and they find a bunch of cops having dug up the floor, you know, hypothetically, it could go really wrong. And even after all of this, Jake still assumes, you know, first he says, what's in the box, like cocaine. You know, he assumes it's got to be some kind of, you know, it must be something very clearly criminal that they're gonna, you know, what's the book? They're gonna put it in evidence, you know, book it as evidence, something like that, you know. And when he sees it's money, again, he assumes, oh, you know, it's clearly illegal. You know, he did not get this money legally, so it is going to, you know, give me a second. You know, they're not supposed to just take the money. And, you know, Alonso says, you know, if you kill someone, they're your slave in the afterlife. And then he says, start an entourage. You know, Alonso could be telling Jake, don't worry, this is never going to happen again, you know. But instead, he says, this is the first of many. You know, again, like, if he's only focusing on, he just has to get through this day, he has to get, what was it, 1 million to pay off the Russians, you know, okay. But he is also testing Jake. He's not just using him, he's putting him in situations and then saying, well, if you can't handle it, fine, leave. And, you know, like, there are times where he is legitimately impressed with Jake. You know, when Jake pulls a gun on him, yeah, he legitimately said he got the drop on all of you. You know, he's impressed, and he, on some level, almost kind of would like to see Jake really succeed. You know, he sees Jake's hesitation and thinks, I can get him past that. He doesn't think, oh, he's just weak, he's useless, which is what other people clearly see. You know, they think they can just walk all over Jake. But Alonso, he sees several very impressive qualities in Jake, and he figures, you know, I mean, obviously he is also planning to live through the movie, but still, like, hypothetically, if he did just want to use Jake to get, you know, to yeah, so that there would be things that day that he could, you know, although, yeah, I guess the question is, when exactly does he make the decision to have someone murder Jake? But I guess that probably is when Jake A, refuses to take the money, and B, pulls a shotgun on him in response. I really appreciate the tension growing before they shoot Roger, so that, you know, Jake and the audience legitimately believe, you know, okay, Alonso has crossed a lot of lines. This is a line he is not going to cross. I love the wicked smile that forms on Alonso's face when Jake says, "No, you're the one who shot Roger," and, you know, just the smile, just, yeah. Denzel is amazing in this. That is the second time you pointed a gun at me. There will not be a third. I appreciate that after Jake pulls the shotgun on Alonso, there's like two cuts to I'm sorry, I don't remember his name, but the guy who was shot, you know, to in the middle of all of this, he is sitting there bleeding, you know, really hurt. And Alonso insists they're not going to shoot Jake, regardless of how much the others push for it. And, excuse me. And Paul just really, yeah, he has absolutely no patience for, you know, again, Alonso thinks, I can handle this. I can talk him down. And Jake actually punches Paul right in the face. And clearly Jake is incredibly uncomfortable with Alonso after, you know, as he puts it, murder and armed robbery of Roger. And Alonso tells Jake his perspective on what things are really like, and again gives some compliments. We do know from later events in the movie, at this point he was already planning on having him killed. He was on the phone with the guys who were going to murder Jake. That's why he said the bathtub needs to be clean. Excellent tension in the scene in the house of gang members. The guys on Off the Shelf reviews do a really great job talking about it. I don't really have anything to add to what they said. So yeah, the thing with the Russians is explained in that scene after being hinted at several times in the movie. The Three Wise Men brought it up. Roger mentioned it. And Alonso's son with Eva Mendes lets in Jake because they connected earlier in the day. So yeah, a lot of other people have already talked about stuff like how convenient it is that he had the wallet of Letty, how unlikely it is that a cop would give up his gun, how unlikely is it that Jake would be allowed to walk in this neighborhood with, you know, yeah, without anybody there with him to vouch for him. So I'm not going to get into that here. I agree with what others say about it, with the consensus on these things. So yeah, the one thing is that apparently, I want to say the commentary track is where I heard this. The reason Alonso got the cousin of Letty to help kill Jake is that when Letty said she had a cousin, and I don't remember what it is she says, but she says, I have a cousin in, and then she mentions the gang name. So, it's not as much that it's convenient that, that Jake happened to have the wallet, because that is where Alonso got the idea. It's just Alonso not really thinking about. I know that he didn't know that Jake had the wallet, but it is still, yeah, I don't know. I guess sometimes he does really fly by the seat of his pants, and it is this thing of like, let me think, what's the word? Yeah, sometimes he does just think of, what to do in a situation based on the, how things just happen to work out. And so he didn't think about the fact that, hypothetically, I guess it's extremely unlikely that Letty herself would be there. But if, you know, yeah, I don't know. I guess it is just that usually Alonso is fortunate enough that things work out. I guess the fact that he beat the Russian to death just for mouthing off shows that he is not capable of completely, like, he doesn't always think things through. Sometimes he makes snap decisions and it doesn't work out for him. I guess just the thing is, he's been a cop for a long time. Would he really be able to keep getting away with rash judgments for all that time? Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't think it is completely credible. Yeah, and when Jake points the gun at Alonso at Eva Mendes' place, the first tactic Alonso takes against Jake is to flatter him. And he does actually seem legitimately proud. Then he moves on to try to intimidate him and incriminate him. I appreciate that we do get to see how good Alonso is in a fight there at the end, and that Jake still does manage to land some blows of his own. So, let's see. Because, like, for most of the movie, he actually doesn't, like, occasionally he'll engage in violence, but, like, he doesn't actually seem to hit any of the gang members when leaving Macy Gray's place. And there's let's see, he only engages in violence against the rapists when let's see. After Jake has already, managed to subdue them. So, we're told he beat a Russian to death. But if not for that final, and that's something I do think is, ultimately, I do think it's a good thing that there is a, for a lot of the movie, it's ideology, it's verbal fights they have, at most, but there at the end, we actually do get a physical fight between them, and Jake truly standing up for what he believes in, and even shooting him, not non-lethally, obviously, there at the end. I do think, yeah, it's too bad that there are so many. I saw someone point out, why would Jake climb up once, if Alonso was standing right up there, Jake would be toast, and him jumping onto the car is also just ridiculous. So, it's too bad, but I do think that there needed to be something like that in the movie. It's just too bad that it's hard to believe and such. But I don't think that the movie should have ended without, at the end of the day, Jake isn't the one to kill him, and I don't think it would have been right for him to kill Alonso, but it is, like, yeah, you did need, at the end of the day, this is a movie about two cops that are both very skilled, that, really, that have completely opposing views on this major thing. They really don't see things the same way on this. I think we did need a fight between them. At the end of the day, it is a Hollywood movie. It's grittier than other Hollywood movies, but like, if this was some independent foreign film kind of thing, then I think it would have been fine to not. But you know, there are certain expectations from Hollywood movies, and I don't think that this movie would have really benefited from bucking those trends, from subverting the expectations. So, and I like that, Alonso, before he goes for the gun, he grabs a cigarette out of the pack that also is on the ground, and he even lights it. Just like the editing room points out that he's incredibly smooth throughout the movie. That's almost like almost like it's a superpower, like it's his superpower or something. And yeah, he is unbelievably smooth. So the movie is an hour and 52 minutes without end credits, and 57 with end credits. And that brings us to the second section, entitled Notes Taken Before Watching. So I went from U571 to Training Day. Now, these are both movies that David Ayer wrote but didn't direct. Between these two films, another he wrote came out, the original Fast and Furious. I will admit there have been times where I actually considered, maybe not that entire series, but at least that first one, just so I haven't yet reviewed everything that he's written, even the stuff he didn't direct, but I am working my way through the rest of it. But I really don't think I'm going to do Fast and Furious, not even that first movie. If you love that movie or that entire franchise, parts of it, that is 100% all right. I haven't yet watched any of it, and I currently don't intend to. It's just not for me. I don't care about cars. which is too bad because under the right circumstances, I do love dumb action movies. And one thing I really love about that franchise is that it is ethnically diverse, even though women remain underrepresented in it. You know, but yeah, the let's see. As far as I can tell, they're movies that aren't ashamed of what they are, and I think that's great. I really, it's it's too bad when you have people put out a movie that they're clearly kind of embarrassed to be attached to. It's just like, if you legitimately don't want to be doing it, like, you know, obviously, why are you doing it? Well, money. But I don't think it's bad that, for example, dumb action movies exist. They have their audience. Again, I'm part of it. You know, I guess I should pick an example. I'm not into sports movies at all. I think it's great they exist because clearly there's an audience for them. I don't think anyone is really served by someone making a movie that they're kind of embarrassed by. Just let someone who's passionate about it direct the movie. You know, this is a pretty good example. There's a pretty good chance to praise. I mean, in general, Lindsay Ellis does incredible videos on YouTube, but if you haven't watched her recent video, "Why Is Cats?" it's worth it's like 57 minutes, but it's worth every second. And she points out that the director, I want to say his name is Tom Hooper. I'm certain someone else has made this joke. I'm not really on social media, so I haven't seen, but I'm sure someone has already made the joke that when he directed Cats, he was more Toby Hooper than Tom Hooper, because that's too obvious of a joke to make. I'm sure someone out there has already made the joke that it seems more like a Toby Hooper, you know, Chainsaw Massacre, uh, crap, what's it called? Poltergeist. Isn't that? No, wait, no, that's not. Is that what it's called? I believe that's. Although apparently he didn't make a lot of the decisions on that one, according to, was it Spielberg? Anyway, you know, just movies that just horrify you beyond belief. More than, you know, oh, right, the guy who made a gritty adaptation of Les Mis, you know, sorry, Les Miserables. If you call it Les Mis, you pretty much do have to be a fan, don't you? I think I watched like one film adaptation of that, and I know some of the core details, but I'm not into musicals. Again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I don't get them. Anyway, she points out that Tom Hooper seems kind of embarrassed about doing a musical. He keeps interrupting the musical numbers with dumb stuff that really doesn't add. Like, I've seen stuff where, like, a great musical number is interrupted and it had a really great effect, but it doesn't seem like that's what Tom Hooper does. It seems like, as she says, he's kind of embarrassed about doing it. And it's like, dude, just let someone who loves this kind of stuff do it instead, you know? It's just, yeah. Anyway, I forget which video, but I pointed out that David Ayer wrote in Training Day, it's not about what happened, it's about what you can prove, as what the corrupt cop says. You know, in that movie, yeah, sorry. In this movie, it's because sorry, this was a note I grabbed from another. I was gonna talk about this in another video, and then when I decided to actually do a video on this movie, anyway, yeah, in this movie, the corrupt. Wait, sorry. No, there it is. Yeah, right. In Training Day, the corrupt cop is the antagonist. In Street Kings, presumably it was felt they could go much further, and there they don't talk about, it's what you can prove. Instead, the corrupt cop literally says it's not about the truth, it's about how we write it up. And in that movie, the corrupt cop is the protagonist, not the antagonist. So yeah, I don't know. I guess it's possible that just I get the sense that to sell this movie at all, he had to make sure that you know the protagonist was not a dirty cop, and like, I mean, we don't know what would happen to Jake after the events of this. Excuse me. It really seems like he's gonna. We don't know if he's. Excuse me. If he's gonna stay in narcotics, but I sincerely doubt that he's gonna cross the line anywhere near as far as he does in this movie ever again. He's yeah. So there is some chance that he's just gonna be a normal cop and not go for a that his ambitions are gone now. But yeah, but in Street Kings, and really it would be like that movie would be hugely different if the protagonist was not a corrupt cop. It would be completely different. Where hypothetically, like, let's say that David Ayer, I think he's very happy with how this movie turned out. I don't know for sure. I'm not sure I've heard him speak on it, but hypothetically, if he was like, I really would have liked for the protagonist to also be kind of a corrupt cop. It wouldn't be impossible to rewrite this to have, like, basically, if Alonzo was just more crooked, like, yeah, let's say that Jake was slightly crooked, and he was gonna, like, every time he confiscates something from a suspect, he keeps a little of it for himself or something, and stuff like that. But then when Alonzo's willing to kill someone for money that knew him, yeah, that seemed comfortable around him. Alonzo does point out, we're not friends. What? Because he knows my first name. That was too far for Jake. Something like that. But I can imagine that, like, in order to get this movie made at all, they had to be like, don't worry, the good guy is not a corrupt cop, and he actually goes against the corrupt cop, and like, I mean, the movie literally ends with the corrupt cop talking about how powerful he is, and then right after he gets shot, while the cop who isn't corrupt, or who has been slightly corrupted over the course of the movie but still wants to be a good guy, he basically, he signs the corrupt cop's death warrant, but refuses to kill him. So he's the good guy, and he makes sure, he knows that for sure Alonzo is going to die, but it's not going to be his own. Yeah. Some of the problems with this movie, especially as far as credibility and such, come from the fact that it's taking place over one single day. End of Watch takes place over a number of days, and there it feels less hard to swallow that so many exciting things happen to these two LA cops. I think, and that was maybe also something that David Ayer, like, realized, that that format just makes more sense if you're gonna have all these wild things happen in just because at the end of the day, both, I don't remember the exact, but that movie's probably also around 2 hours long, but yeah, the events happen over there yeah, over a longer period of time. So now, but at the same time, I get it. If this movie would be very different if it wasn't set over in just one day. Now, I think they did a pretty good job of making sure that Jake, as played by Ethan Hawke, and the way he's written and characterized, that he's not, too weak to be compelling opposite Denzel, because it really, this movie could super easily have just been like, okay, it's a one-man show, and like, the other guy's just barely there, but no, he does. I wouldn't, like, he's not as strong and like, hypothetically, if they made another movie about one of these two characters, like, let's say that they either made a sequel where Ethan Hawke, we see what happens after Alonzo is dead, or they made a prequel where it's still played by Denzel, and we see some of his earlier, maybe we see as he's being turned, as he's being made so corrupt. We see the sorts of things that happen to make him so corrupt. Hypothetically, let's say that both of these movies were made. Yeah, hypothetically, we're gonna go wild with this hypothetical. Two alternate universes, and in one, Ethan Hawke gets a sequel, and in another, Denzel gets a prequel. I am 100% certain that of those two alternate universes, the one where you really make a lot of money off this other movie related to the first Training Day is the prequel with Denzel. If he wasn't in the movie, we wouldn't be anywhere near as interested and invested. But Ethan Hawke does still, he still makes an impression. I have to wonder if they made the cop who is corrupt and does police brutality black so that white audiences would have an easier time accepting it. I mean, all the worst characters in this are non-white, and yes, I realize there are non-white gangs and the like in LA, obviously, but, you know, I mean, yeah, I guess, okay, so a couple of Alonzo's crew are actually white, but the I mean, at the end of the day, these are, they're crooked cops, and the one thing we see them do is help kill Roger so that they can get millions out of that. I'm sorry, but they're nowhere near as cruel as the three guys who are about to kill Jake, and they're unmistakably Latino, all of them. So, and yeah, it's just kind of, yeah. Anyway, let's see. And again, like, hypothetically, if Denzel's character was played by a white guy, okay, him going into gang neighborhoods is not, you know, unless it's like Bloods and Crips or something. Wait, sorry. Am I thinking of? No, wait, sorry. Those are also non-white. What am I thinking? Yeah, I'm not expecting an answer. I'm thinking out loud to prevent dead air. I'm not sure I can think of the name of a high-profile. Yeah, hypothetically, let's say you rewrite the movie so that both of the cops, both Jake and Alonzo are white. The neighborhood where Alonzo's really comfortable could be a white supremacist neo-Nazi neighborhood, maybe, something like that. And yeah, then it wouldn't be. I'm not saying obviously, given how many the LAPD do have a number of black people. I would be extremely surprised if every single one of those black cops were completely straight and narrow. I'm sure there are dirty cops who are black as well. Now, let's see. It's just that plenty of people already think non-whites are inherently worse people than whites, and David Ayer has made the dirty cop characters white in other movies. I I can't help but think. I want to really quickly say I do not get the sense that David Ayer is racist at all. And I mean, I guess there's such a thing as internalized racism. I don't think Antoine Fuqua has internalized racism. I don't think he hates black people either, or Latinos. But I can imagine that part of selling this movie to a studio was you're going to get this really, he's the the bad cop is black and he's like really aggressive and but also charming and passionate and such. Like, he is a very stereotypical black character. Now, I don't remember the actor's name, but you know, he's a dirty cop in this. He plays Billy Bedlam in Con Air. I absolutely love it. I love him in everything I've seen him in. Even a movie like I don't know. Should I get into? I think the movie. No, no, I'm not gonna get into it in this video. It would just then it's all people are gonna pay attention to. I might get. I realize I'm building up like crazy here. I might do a video on that movie down the line. Alonzo prepares to take out Roger and realizes, I need a doctor, get me a doctor, and Dre was the first one who came to mind. I love the soundtrack to the movie. So, let's see. I am going to be quoting a little bit of the off-the-shelf reviews. I actually discovered them when I was, I did I did a YouTube search for reviews of this movie, and I found theirs, and yeah, I subscribed to them immediately. Let's see. Yeah, among other things, they point out that Ethan Hawke has an innocence to him. He looks like the good guy. And they point out Denzel is intimidating and self-assured from right away. And yeah, and throughout the film, you are in the car with Jake. You are Jake. You're wondering, would I put up with this guy testing me? That's one of the reasons it has to be the it's very effective that it is set in a single day, because the moment that he goes home for the day and like, I mean, hypothetically he could just like come in the next day and say, you know I I'm and just switch into a different, go out of narcotics, or like, I don't know, I guess there's some chance that if he like requests a different training officer, that's gonna like ruffle feathers or something. But the moment, yeah, it's very important that it is this one day. To point out Dr. Dre's intimidating even when he's just standing in the background, not saying anything. So, yeah, as usual, if you're at all interested, watch their video yourself. It's a great video. And yeah, they point out that Alonso does really respect that Hoyt manages to pull a gun on him. And Yeah, and the one act of kindness Hoyt performs saves his life, which counteracts everything that Alonso said about how the streets will destroy you. And the original script apparently had Alonso get away with it, but Denzel Washington said he wouldn't do the movie if the character didn't get his comeuppance. And they try to come up with a bad Denzel Washington movie and have a hard time. They point out Virtuosity might be it, although they can still watch it. I think I watched that movie at least one. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I watched it, but I'm not sure I watched it more than once. But it's not Denzel's fault that's. I mean, it's a '90s movie about virtual reality. Is there a single group? I guess maybe the no. I don't think there's a single good. Some of them are fun, but they're not technically good. I rewatched Everything Wrong with Train Day, and it's genuinely pretty funny and does a good job pointing out the contrivances. And the making of Training Day behind the scenes. Let's see. They talk about how realistic it is, and David Ayer appears in it, and I'm just like, wow, that's what he looked like back then. He looks like a kid compared to like, excuse me. I mean, I guess when I think of him, I mostly think of the way he looks when I see like behind the scenes of like, I guess, Suicide Squad. So there are a number of years in between, and possibly Fury and Suicide Squad. So this came out 11 years before Fury. So, and they talk about how much Alonso is actually appealing to Hoyt. And they talk about Alonso started out as a good cop, but gradually got to be a bad one, even though he himself still believes he's right. And they talk about the casting of Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, and Macy Gray. Benefits of being able to film in the actual area. Normally, no cameras are allowed in that part of LA, but Antoine Fuqua had connections. And he himself says he hopes he could help inspire the kids who live in that neighborhood by meeting Denzel, Ethan, and himself, and seeing that he got out of that area, so maybe they can too. And he mentions, I think in the commentary track, I'm not entirely sure. I don't remember if I wrote it down, but I think it's something like that. He himself was inspired to get out of I'm not sure if that was by them making a movie, but he felt like he wanted to get out of he wanted more than to stay in that neighborhood. And let's see. Okay, yeah, and there's let's see. Yeah, the editing room abridged script, and let's see. I guess. Yeah, um, you know, it's a great script. Definitely read it if you're at all if you like the movie itself. One thing I'm gonna quote from it is they point out there at the end when Ethan Hawke jumps onto the car. Why doesn't Denzel just stop driving? Stop driving, get out of the car, shoot Ethan. But instead, he drives around in circles. And it's like it's there because they wanted the action scene to keep going for a little long. That's literally it. And that brings us to the commentary track. So yeah, he points out that the movie opens on the Hoyt's dream, the American dream, his perfect life. So let's see. And yeah, Hoyt's fatal flaw is his ambition. He wants to do well. And he talks about that Ethan Hawke is like Hoyt, that he too wants to provide the best future for his family. And Alonzo is charming and tough. And with Alonzo, it's like meeting the devil. He's going to come to you with charm. Alonzo was once like Hoyt. And Jake is the audience. A lot of people don't know what happens on the streets, what happens to undercover cops. And yeah, about the college kids, he says, this is a fun scene. I wanted to show how aggressive Alonzo can be in a situation that doesn't require it. And before they toned it down, Alonzo asked the college kids, "What's your mother like?" And he flirted with the girl in the back seat. And they toned it down so there was somewhere to go after the scene, so it doesn't. And it's too bad. Like, maybe it's on another DVD, but the DVD I have, it has a bunch of DVD extras, and it does have some deleted scenes, but it doesn't have that. And I would really enjoy seeing that. If yeah, I get why it's not in the movie, but it'd be enjoyable to see. And Alonzo almost never lies. Maybe one or two things he says are lies. The rest is all true. And Alonzo is correct that Hoyt has to say yes to drugs. That's how you can remain undercover. If you say no, that immediately gives away that you're an undercover cop. And his ambition made him smoke marijuana. He could have gotten out of the car, but he didn't. And Alonzo is like the devil, luring him with drugs and women. And there's this part where they go down the road, and he says they're crossing into a dark place. And yeah, and Jake is descending into a heart of darkness since he smoked the marijuana. And that's why Alonzo is filmed like that, and he highlights the red tongue is like, I think that was also a thing that was like the devil. And he liked, Scott Glenn, he's a great actor and he brings a lot to the table. And he says that Roger and Alonzo were both in Vietnam. And yeah, and a lot of people came back from Vietnam and became cops because they didn't feel safe without a gun. They enjoyed the thrill of the kill. Alonzo enjoys the kill. I gotta say, I find that a really interesting part of the backstory there. I wish it was a little clearer in the movie. I'm not sure I can think of anything in the movie itself that really points to that. So I wish that there was some brief thing that really hinted at that, because it makes a ton of sense. And yeah, and apparently some, like, I forget what he said, but uh, I'm just gonna go, yeah. Some people wanted him to cut the snail joke out of the scene. It's a slow burn, but he had faith that the audience wouldn't get bored. And I agree. I don't think that it ever gets boring. It's true that, yeah, like, hypothetically, I could easily imagine you could remove that joke from the scene. It's not necessary to the scene. And the scene would, the scene doesn't otherwise really ever slow down. The rest of the time, it is, there's constantly, but I don't think it ever gets boring. And yeah, he points out Alonso was trying to get drugs and alcohol into Hoyt's system to corrupt him. And going to Roger's place is in part making Hoyt feel like part of the gang, accepted, but it's also about making Roger think that everything's okay and finding out where Roger, where he's going to be, what he's going to do later that day. And the actually, yeah, considering that Roger, he had heard that Alonso was, that there was a hit out on him. So Alonso going there and saying, I'm not worried about the hit, that tells Roger that things are okay. If he had just shown up with the other guys and, grabbed the money, then, the moment that Roger saw Alonso, he'd put two and two together. And, you know, like, hypothetically, if Roger had, like, attacked one of the others, things could have gotten messier. If they start, like, they're surrounding Roger. If he gets up and grabs one of them and the others are shooting Roger, they might hit one of the others. And then questions are asked, and it's like, if he shot Jeff immediately, why did you surround him before you took a shot at him? Why didn't you return fire immediately? And saving the girl about to be raped, and then again near the end of the movie, are the only times Hoyt follows his instinct and does the right thing. Right, yeah, sorry, this is where I picked that up. He points out, it's the commentary track where he points out the hairdresser is either Korean or Vietnamese, and it's common for a lot of undercover cops to speak several languages, including those, so that they can communicate with a lot of people in these areas. And Denzel Washington, the actor, not the character played by him in this, has a great memory, and he'll pick things up others say and use it down the line. He heard an undercover cop say, "You want to go to jail, you want to go home," and so he used it in the movie. And on set, he remained in character. Sometimes he'd say horrifying things, and it could be difficult to work with. And yeah, I'm just going to quote Antoine Fuqua here. I already knew Macy Gray when I read the script. I already knew Macy Gray. When I read the script, I read the character's lines in her voice, so I told her, you gotta play this character. I told her, go to the hood, meet some of the people, put a character together from it. And a lot of people don't even recognize her for a while because it's such a great character. I gotta agree. like this and then like other stuff, but just it's so completely different from like, yeah, it's and yeah, and the scene with Macy Gray is the first scene where Hoyt can say that Alonzo did something illegal. Yeah, Alonzo believes he's indestructible, so he's offended they're shooting at him. And are you a sheep or are you a wolf? Alonzo is pushing him, seeing how far he'll go. Shootouts are scary, but they're also exciting, and that is something he wants. That's why he became a cop instead of like playing football. And Ava Mendes' character probably doesn't have a green card. Alonzo made sure to get her an apartment so he can get away with anything. There's love in his eyes when he looks at Alonzito. They're still cold and distant. This is as affectionate as he can be. Nothing in Los Angeles is what it appears to be. The sun is shining, someone's being murdered somewhere. It's raining, someone is celebrating a premiere of a movie somewhere else in the city. And yeah, and the three wise men scene, Alonzo's out there doing the work. And these are the fucking suits sitting there in Armani, and you know the story about the peanut butter is about how the system doesn't always work. I'm really glad we get three wise men cast so well. They bring a lot of weight to the movie. It's not an indictment of the LAPD. This is happening everywhere. I could set this movie anywhere. Chicago, Italy. There's some heroes and some bad cops. This is what this film's, this film is about the corrupt ones. Yeah, so we looked at corrupt cops and said, what happens if one of them says no? That's the question me and David kept asking each other. That's what this movie is about. And Alonso's crew, he calls them the Wild Bunch. He says, they're all great actors. I wish I had some more stuff with them. I mean, that is the thing. Like, I already mentioned that, we'd all love a prequel also featuring this. I mean, I guess at this point, you know, even with de-aging, you probably have to recast the part. But I think the other corrupt cops he works with, excuse me, yeah, probably all of them. If each of them got like a spin-off movie that was about their origin story, them breaking bad or something, I think people would watch that, yeah. And yeah, so when they go in and point guns at Roger, he says, "This is the wake-up call point. Sorry, this is the wake-up call. Hoyt is in the lion's den. There's no way out now." And he said he had to stay on set till he was sure I had everything. So much happens between Alonzo and Jake in the scene. And this is the final test. He's offered money. And me and the DP wanted to tell a story through light. Let's see. Hoyt is partially in the light. Alonzo has the shadow over him in this scene. cops like Alonzo are really smart. They plan ahead. Everything about them is a game. Even the way they talk on the streets. And right after the robbery of Roger, we think that Alonzo is just an evil bad guy. We don't understand why he did it, but then he explains. And Alonzo is playing Hoyt. He knows that. Yeah, he knows to appeal to Hoyt by telling him Roger sold dope to children when Hoyt has a child himself. Originally, they were supposed to speak Spanish in front of Hoyt because he doesn't know Spanish, which he said at the start of the movie, but they ended up cutting it, and that's why Alonzo picked the Latino gang instead of a black gang to kill Hoyt and sorry, Hoyt. What's that say? Yeah. And yeah, and Fuqua says, got a lot of people said, would a cop really give up his gun? And this is when audiences realized Alonzo was not a good guy. They believed it up until they saw that he was gone, that he abandoned Jake with the gang members. And yeah, Alonzo chose that these would be the ones to kill Hoyt when he realized that they were Letty's cousins. It's Alonzo's sick sense of humor. I'm not going to get into it. The same actress plays Letty in this and Harsh Times, but in Harsh Times, like in this, she's said to be 14, and in Harsh Times, I don't know exactly, but I would definitely say somewhere in her 20s at least. She's definitely not like just, let's see, Harsh Times, was that 2003, 2005, something like that. There's no way that she's only that few years older. And she wasn't 14 when they made this movie, but the idea that it's supposed to be the same character, I guess one of these two movies is not set in the year it came out, is set several years. I don't know. I do understand why David Ayer wanted to work with that actress again. I guess maybe she should have a different name. It feels a little weird that it's the same character. That just yeah. Now and Aloncito trusts Hoyt more than Alonzo because let's see, Hoyt sat and watched TV with the kid, which Alonzo wouldn't do. And he says Alonzo loves himself. He wouldn't necessarily kill his kid, but he will use his kid. And he said he only trusts one guy to do second unit. For me, it never looks the same, he says. Let's see. Yeah, and he says about the fight there at the end, wanted to show Alonzo's temper. This is probably how he killed the guy in Vegas. It's the first time we see him physically try to beat someone to death on camera. He didn't want to show a flashback to Vegas, so instead, you know, yeah, instead shows the violence by having Alonzo use the same kind of violence. And There were a lot of conversations about Jake getting onto the car roof. Some wanted to see him run and jump. Others wanted to only see him land. I like that we only see him land. It's not like it's not impossible to. Yeah, he was on the roof. He jumps, and we see him land. It's like it would like if the last time we saw him, he was still inside of Alonso's place. Okay, then it's maybe a little, but it's not. It doesn't appear to be that far of a jump. Oh, sorry, right. Here he does say, there was no subconscious reason for making the good guy white and the bad guy black. These were just the actors I liked. I guess I just, but I don't know. I guess I just, the thing is that the gang neighborhood that Alonso goes into and where, yeah, okay, they're by now sick and tired of him, but if he was a white cop, I really don't believe that they would ever let him in there just like that. Let's see. I don't know. I guess if Fuqua just forgot about that aspect and thought to himself, no, I didn't mean to. I don't know. Let's see. Yeah, and they're at the end when the let's see when Alonso's trying to get the others to help. It's the first time we see him as a victim, trying desperately to get them to help. He's like a pit bull, slobbering, barking, no, let's see, not biting. And his own kid saw him on the ground, on his knees. That's what's that say? Final? Yeah, something. And there were a lot of conversations about the ending. And when he's they're at the very end when he's shot a lot. He's breathing like a dying animal, like Roger when he got shot. And he says, I'd like to thank all the people who helped make the movie be what it is, and thank you for watching with me. Okay, so there are, on the DVD, there are 12 and a half minutes of additional scenes. And, let's see, yeah, there's one where where Alonso tells Jake, never tell anyone exactly where we are, ever. And Alonso flirts with two girls who are across the street. Both of them, they're like, they're neither of them are white. It's now been it's been a month since I watched these. I'm sorry, I do not remember if one Latino, one black, both Latina. I'm sorry, I do not remember. Let's see. And Alonso says, we're going to N-word town. And he says it twice, and the first time he doesn't censor himself, but he can tell that really bothers Hoyt, so then he does censor himself. So, yeah, that must be right before they go into the gang neighborhood. And, let's see. Yeah, there's one scene, I'm not going to be able to do it justice by just explaining it. It's well worth watching, and you can read the Cliff's Notes of it in the IMDb trivia. Just do a word search for the word spooky and you'll find it. And let's see. Yeah, let's see, what's that say? Yeah, Smiley reveals to to Hoyt that right before Jake gets on the bus and goes to confront Alonso, Smiley reveals Alonso wanted to kill him by setting him on fire in front of his wife and child, which is a line David Ayer liked so much he used it again, and there it wasn't cut from the film, in Suicide Squad. Actually, yeah, in that one, doesn't he say, burn down your house with your wife and child also in it, with all three of you in it, or something like that. And let's see. Yeah, and there's an alternate ending. Really, it's almost exactly the same. The only thing that's different is that, you know, this is something that, you know, the Everything Wrong with video and the Goofs section on IMDb also points out. When Jake gets out of his car after Alonzo has been shot, there's someone in a car behind him opening the door and getting out. And we don't see who it is. The full original ending was that that was the three wise men, and they ask for Alonzo's money. Jake tells them he booked it, tells them to leave him alone, and, excuse me, they drive away. And I'm not 100% certain why it was, excuse me, why it was cut, but yeah, and it does make sense that you know, it is a little, as it is, the movie just doesn't address that because they know that there's money, you know, he told them. So obviously they would ask, and they know that Hoyt was with him, you know, so he's the one they would ask, you know. Anyway, I don't know, maybe they thought that it wasn't credible or something. And yeah, the DVD has a trailer. I usually watch the trailer in general, and any trailer I can find anyway. But just, yeah, I really love the trailer man voice and the whole thing. I do want to point out the trailer kind of makes it sound like Alonzo is only now crossing the line. You know, it's like it says in the next 24 hours, you know, a man will a cop will cross the line, and then it shows Alonzo. I mean, I guess they're talking about Hoyt, but when it says that, we see Alonzo there. So it kind of, like, if you watched the trailer and you knew nothing about the movie, you would think that it was about the first time Alonzo crossed the line, instead of that it's the first time Jake and the audience are seeing him. You know, we didn't know he was crossing the line before, you know, before we watched the movie, unless we heard about it, but it's not the first time that he crosses the line at all. And anyway, and you know, the rock superstar or rap superstar plays, awesome, great trailer. And there's a music video for Number One by Nelly. I don't really have anything to say about it. And there's one called Got You by Pharaoh Munch. I don't know this guy. Sorry. Anyway, basically the rapper plays, you know, plays Alonzo in the music video, and there are some encounters and characters that are similar to the movie. It's pretty decent. You know, it's fairly standard procedure kind of thing, but it's enjoyable to watch. And that brings us to the final section, entitled Critics Sites, IMDb and Wikipedia. Excuse me. Okay, so yes, I have to admit I haven't watched a lot of Antoine Fuqua's other work. I have watched Shooter. I really love that movie as well. And yeah, I know he's made other good movies. Maybe I'll watch them. I haven't yet. And, you know, written by David Ayer. The only thing I haven't seen by him is Bright. I love his work except for Sabotage and Suicide Squad, which are both enjoyable but flawed. So, let's see. But yeah, you know, I'm only now watching, you know, let's see. I had watched some of the stuff that he wrote that he didn't direct himself, but I haven't reviewed it. I only started reviewing it with U571. Now this, I had already watched Taking Lives, which I remember not liking, SWAT, which I remember as being okay, and I had already also, like I mentioned, watched this one before. But Dark Blue, is that the only one? I guess that is the only one that, yeah, U571 and Dark Blue were the only ones that I hadn't watched until recently. Dark Blue I hadn't watched yet. I don't remember. A month from now, maybe, is when I get to it. So, and let's see. Why did I copy all this stuff? I guess I forgot to. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Yeah. The yeah. I've obviously I have watched Denzel in a number of movies. I'm not sure this is all of the ones I have watched, but just brief. And yeah, Virtuosity is probably the only bad movie that I can think of that he's in. But yeah, the ones I've seen, the ones I'm certain I've seen, I might have watched some of the others. Philadelphia, Crimson Tide, Virtuosity, He Got Game, The Siege, The Bone Collector, Man on Fire, The Manchurian Candidate, Inside Man, Deja Vu, American Gangster, The Taking, of Pelham 1, 2, 3, and Unstoppable. When it comes to Ethan Hawke, the ones I'm certain I've watched are Sinister, Daybreakers, Lord of War, Assault on Precinct 13, Taking Lives, Great Expectations, Gattaca, and Dead Poets Society. That's right, he is in 2 movies that were written by David Ayer, although apparently, let's see, Taking Lives, is it that David Ayer eventually took his name off it because they changed so much or something? I don't remember. I wasn't originally going to cover it, at least not as part of David Ayer written stuff, but, I don't even remember, either Wikipedia or IMDb says that he did do some writing on it, even though he eventually took his name off it. So, I am going to go ahead and start going through the ones. Oh, there it is. Start going through ones I marked specifically to cover, rather than make a video as long as I have been until recently. So let's see. Hmm. Denzel Washington towers above the film's petty failings, overwhelming them with his sheer presence and defying us to tear our eyes away. Very well put. And some of the action is cartoonish. Reminds me of the films of the 1970s that were gritty and violent, but that also showcased stellar acting, back before blood and intelligence became mutually exclusive in movies. As usual, Washington is astounding. He grabs the screen like a vice and never lets go. Now, and as usual, the I recommend you read the reviews yourself. Let's see. Like that. Accidentally briefly reverted to my native tongue for a second. I appreciate that it is a, excuse me, it's kind of confusing to hear if you don't know what I'm saying. Let's see. Training Day has been made with style and confidence, but it doesn't know whose side it's on. I think that is a decent point. Giving Alonso a melodramatic secret, a reason for this particular behavior on this particular day, trivializes the whole exercise. I do think that it would have been like, yeah, hypothetically, if the, yeah, it could possibly be stronger, although, without that, it's not comeuppance he gets there at the end. Like, if there wasn't something very specific that, while Training Day is a violent film, its brutality takes place in a believable moral universe and isn't just tossed in to give us a thrill. Several reviewers say it's a cop-out and say they don't like the ending, too conventional. Ayer has woven a complicated plot in which even the seemingly most insignificant event will impact on the film's harrowing climax. Training Day's explosive action and all that stuff, and it's a shame that the front and back halves of the movie don't match up. Some say that it's, oh, we've heard it all before, but some say, eye-opening. And some say that, his Denzel Washington's acting is great. Some say that, oh, he's acting at, not with other performers. I can see what they mean. It, you know, some of the time it is maybe a bit, yeah, the one man show kind of thing. Hard to swallow, even harder to stomach. That's a pretty good. I don't know. I like the. Is that technically a play on words? Now, let's see. And let's see. Denzel Washington tears up the screen as the personification of corrupt evil. Excuse me. Rather than challenging us to draw the line between good and evil for ourselves, Training Day does it for us, ruining the film's main source of tension. I think there's definitely some truth to that, yeah. Its events really are confined to a 24-hour period. I'm tempted to joke it's that too bad the running time wasn't also. So you're saying the movie feels like it's more than 24 hours long. That's, I mean, I don't agree, but that is a pretty novel way to say that the movie's way too long. And, right, so those were the Rotten Tomatoes critic reviews, and now I'm getting into the user reviews. I I quite like that he got to play a more, you know, yeah, straight up, a bad guy character, considering that he usually does play, was it only after this that he started playing anti-heroes? I'm not entirely sure. But he had played such good guys before. And this really showed that he had some darkness to him, that he could make that work. There are some actors that for a while they play good guys, and then when they try to play bad guys, people don't really accept it. I mean, today he does, like, let's see. I mean, I haven't watched it, but I know that Equalizer they made two of those, didn't they? And he's in both. He stars in both. And then Man on Fire, that's from 2004. That was after this. I mean, there are times in, let's see, what's it called? Philadelphia. He starts out as kind of a bigot, doesn't he? But he ends up being a good guy. When in this, he's not a good guy. And that brings us to the Metacritic critic reviews. So let's see. gorgeous pedestal for Washington. Now, one critic said that this is like Washington's Scarface. God, I love that movie. I keep going back and forth on whether or not I should do a video on it, but man, I love that movie. Probably my favorite. Yeah, my favorite Al Pacino performance. And he's had a lot of great ones. And on to Metacritic user reviews. And gonna skim to see if there's something that I want to read out. Let's see. It gets a lot of love and praise, and then various, critic reviews, user reviews on both sites. So, right. And that gets us to the IMDb stuff. So, excuse me. The only thing more dangerous, sorry, tagline. The only thing more dangerous than the line being crossed is the cop who will cross it. There. So, let's see. Yeah, so IMDb trivia. During the scene when Jake plays cards with the Latino gangsters, director Antoine Fuqua gave certain instructions to the actors playing the gangsters without telling Ethan Hawke. This was done to further confuse him and add to the tension of the scene. I gotta admit, I am a big fan of when directors do stuff like that. Like, I understand the perspective that says you shouldn't do that. You should have told that actor exactly what was going to happen, because but I really like when stuff like that is done, because it gets the more real kind of yeah. And Denzel Washington has frequently said that Detective Alonzo Harris is his favorite character that he's played. And yeah, the line King Kong ain't got shit on me was ad-libbed by Denzel Washington. And Tobey Maguire was seriously considered for the part of Officer Jake Hoyt. He even followed undercover narcotics officers in Los Angeles for 2 months and gained weight for the role. He was dropped when Ethan Hawke, Fuqua's first choice, was finally available for the shooting schedule. I'll admit that I haven't seen him in that much. Maybe he would be good in this. I have a hard time believing he'd be as good as Ethan Hawke is. About the casting of Ethan Hawke, Antoine Fuqua said, "There's something innocent about Ethan. He's such a nice guy. But there's something in his eyes that tells you he's seen something." When the movie came out, many viewers and critics were skeptical of the scenes where Jake Hoyt smokes marijuana laced with PCP, and Alonso's explanation of how a cop who didn't take drugs offered to him on the streets would be ID'd as police and murdered. David Ayer responded in an interview by holding up a highlighted section of LAPD's rules and regulations. It stated that officers were allowed to use narcotics in very specific undercover situations, and hewed closely to what Alonso told Jake. That is really, I appreciate that he did that, because that really is like, it's the kind of thing where if you don't hear it right from the original source, a lot of people aren't gonna believe it. But yeah, and once you're told, it is like, I mean, yeah, really, what are they gonna do? Never ever touch drugs while surrounded by people who are using drugs, and no one's gonna be like, is that guy a cop? I mean, that's the just, yeah, of course it is. I'll admit, when I first heard it, I probably didn't really believe it, but yeah, it's to give his character a much more authentic aspect. Denzel Washington decided to have the same look as disgraced LAPD officer Rafael, Perez. And this movie is unique in Academy Awards history in that it's the only time an African American, Denzel Washington, won the Best Actor Oscar as directed by a fellow African American, Antoine Fuqua. I don't know when that was last updated, but yeah, that might still be true. I really hope that there are eventually more movies that, yeah. David Ayer was the only writer to work on the script, such a rarity that it merited a congratulatory call from the chairman of Warner Brothers Pictures. He really is incredibly talented. I'm not going to claim that his work is flawless, but he is incredibly talented. I really, really hope that, like, let's see, he, yeah, I mean, the thing is, the last several movies, everything I hear about Bright makes it sound terrible. Sabotage is bad, and Suicide Squad are bad, although those two movies are definitely enjoyable. But I really, really hope that it's not just, I mean, Sabotage, one of the, no, it is, yeah, I hope he hasn't lost his touch, that he's still going to be able to put out good movies. But otherwise, I guess the last really great movie he put out was Fury in 2012. Wait, when did was Sabotage before or after Fury? I can never remember. Anyway, the word fuck is used 211 times. That's an average of twice per minute. That's, yeah. Yeah, not exactly twice, but yeah. Let's see. The movie is technically 100 and, let's see, 112 minutes, I think. Yeah. So it's not literally two times as much, but 211 is not twice, but still. Mickey Rourke was Antoine Fuqua's first choice for the part of Roger, and the studio turned Fuqua's request down. I could definitely see that. I think that could, yeah. Let's see. In 2001, he hadn't really had a comeback yet, right? That was a little later. I forget what. The Wrestler was his sort of comeback, right? That was like 2008, I want to say. So yeah. Christian Bale was offered the role of Jake Hoyt, but turned it down. I think he's too intense for the role. I really don't think. And this was like, okay, so yeah, I guess it would have. Let's see. I'm not certain about when these two movies were filmed, but I guess maybe he turned it down and then did American Psycho instead. I don't know if it was already done by then. And I guess American Psycho is when the world realized that Christian Bale is intense, right? Before that, he was like the kid from Newsies or something. So I guess I can see if you haven't watched, but having watched American Psycho, there's no way. I'm sorry, I don't buy for a second. Like the moment that Alonso would turn his back on him, that would be it. I no. Ethan Hawke I buy, but Christian Bale in that role. But again, it is, Christian Bale did work with David Ayer and in on Harsh Times, and on that David Ayer directed himself, but also wrote. So yeah, it is, the various. I mean, I don't know if it's that these actors were like, I liked that other David Ayer script. I'd like to work with another he wrote, but there are a couple that reappeared in later. Yeah. Ethan Hawke was nominated for an Oscar for Best Actor in a supporting role, despite the fact he has more screen time in the film than his co-star Denzel Washington, who was nominated for and won the Oscar for Best Actor in a leading role. Denzel dominates their scenes together, but it's true. Ethan Hawke is seen before Denzel, and the first scenes are Ethan without Denzel, and the last time we see Ethan, it's also without Denzel. And there are scenes where, yeah, for example, when he's playing cards, several minutes without Denzel at all. So yeah, but I Denzel dominates their scenes and dominates the movie. Now let's see. Okay, so in October 2019, it was reported that Warner Brothers were developing a prequel to Training Day. The prequel follows a young Alonzo. Yeah, in late April of 1992, 2 days before the verdict of the Rodney King trial and the LA riots. That could be interesting, but then, I mean, I haven't watched it yet, but Dark Blue is already set during the riots, so. But that's the of course that doesn't have the Alonzo Harris character. I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll try to speak to that once when I do a video on Dark Blue. I'll maybe talk about if I think with the existence of the movie Dark Blue, if it still makes sense to do a movie, set at that same time, even if it does have Alonzo Harris. But yeah, I mean, if it, 2019, yeah, in 2019, if they had made a movie about Alonso in 1992, if this is about Alonso in 2001, obviously they would have to recast the role. I I honestly don't know. Does Denzel have any kids that act? I don't follow. Again, I'm not expecting some magic reply. There's no. But I'm just saying. I'm thinking out loud. I'm trying to. I don't know. I do not follow celebrity gossip, and yeah, like if I had heard about, but you know, could Michael B. Jordan maybe play the role? I'll acknowledge there's maybe not the strongest resemblance, but he's got the acting chops. There's some chance that I would actually. I very rarely go to the movies for anything that isn't based on comic books, because with me watching every comic book adaptation, there's so many movies to go to the movies for. But there's some chance I would actually go for that. If yeah. So that let's see. Right, that brings us to the IMDb reviews. And here's one person who says, "Isn't it enlightening that all of the film's people of color are despicable drug dealer or corrupt cops, while the film's conscience is the white cop?" And he gave it a 3 out of 10. And yeah, and this guy gave it a 6 out of 10. He said he was going to give it a 3 out of 10 except for the ending. I mean, how much can you stand a rogue cop movie? It takes away your confidence in the real police to see them portrayed this way. And I understand that perspective, but I just think if we don't point out that there are really crooked cops, then things aren't going to change. You know, there was a long time where very few people were actually willing to admit that there were crooked cops, even though, like, historically, there's been crooked cops for an extremely long time. Not only in America, I'm not singling them out. You know, there are a lot of and yeah, if you don't point it out, then it's never going to change. So I think most of the IMDb reviews, I only read the very most, the ones voted the most useful. Most of those were very positive, but there were a few. Let's see. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, so this user review says, "However, I do have one issue with the film, and that is its secondary character, Hoyt, played by Ethan Hawke. Don't get me wrong, I would take nothing away from Hawke's performance, but they made the character Hoyt so bland and predictable. The goody-goody always does right, and I know that's what they were going for, but they could have made him more interesting. Maybe he is tempted by Alonzo, almost turns to the dark side at the end of the film, something to make him more complex, particularly after all he has gone through." I mean, I can see what you mean, but I don't know. I feel like he does do a lot of things that he knows are wrong, though. He could have. Alonso keeps giving him chances to leave, and he keeps going along with it. I don't know. I personally do feel that they made him go along with enough things that it was. Yeah. Now, let's see. Right. I guess that is pretty much it. So, yeah. I let's see, is there anything I can think of as a clever? I don't think there's really anything. yeah, I really like that it is so honest about how bad things can be in the environment it depicts. And let's see, I appreciate the fact that there are multiple corrupt cops. It's not, I mean, ultimately the movie isn't really, you don't see enough, cops in this movie to say for sure if this movie ultimately believes it's a few bad apples, or there's a, like, as we get a couple of indications. The the we're told that the police, was it the police chief or something, always warns them so they know, you know so that, way ahead of time, so they know not to take drugs for when they're going to be tested. And the three wise men are, they do appear to be, like, they have a lot of influence. And let's see, and certainly on, not everybody knows who Alonzo is, but it's still accepted that, that no one is like, what, a dirty cop, that doesn't exist. And yeah, so at the end of the day, we don't know for sure if this movie believes that it's just a few bad apples, or there is a fundamental problem with police training, among other things. So it's hard to say, but I do appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the vast majority of the cops we do see in the movie are dirty. Almost all of the cops we see, there's Alonzo and then there's his crew. Those are, other than Jake, those are the only cops we see. So the vast majority of the cops we see in the movie are dirty cops. There are a lot of movies where there are some bad cops, where at least once in the movie you'll see a big group of cops, and you'll have, like, the despite some of the bad things done by some of the cops, you'll the rest of the cops will be depicted as good people, and thus, saying, the vast majority of cops are good. And I guess I'm kind of dancing around. I I believe that everyone considers themselves the hero of their own story. I don't think anybody goes out there and says that they are a bad person when they do bad things to people who don't deserve it. They tell themselves, but they do deserve it. I do think that there are problems in America with the way cops are trained. They're they're told to be too trigger happy. They're told that it's better to, what's the saying? It's better to be judged by 12 than carried out by 6. It's better to shoot the wrong person than to hesitate and possibly get shot yourself. And I don't think that, personally, I don't think that it's an unsolvable problem. I think that we need reform of police training. I think that it is necessary to go in and simply change, to make them less trigger happy. But no, I don't think that, I'm certain that there are some that are worse than others, but I don't perceive it to be a case of a few bad apples. The Based on what I've seen and heard, it appears to me to be an issue of training that tells them to be more worried about being shot than accidentally shooting the wrong person. And I really don't think it helps to say oh, cops are naturally good. They don't make mistakes, and, they don't do things wrong intentionally. I think it's necessary to be honest that the training is bad, and that leads to way more violence by cops. And the fact that, among other, the police unions and such tend to protect cops even when they're clearly doing the wrong thing. The brutal way they've handled protesters, nonviolent, peaceful protesters, while protecting violent protesters, is just ridiculous. I do believe America needs to deal with the problem of police training and procedure, and I don't think that things are going to get better until someone goes in and just deals with that. And I do feel bad for the good cops that are legitimately that hear the training and say, you know what? No, I don't agree with that. I'm going to take the extra second to make sure I don't kill the wrong person. I really do feel bad for them, but based on what we see, they do appear to be in the minority. And I don't blame people for doing what they're told when, like, if you're surrounded by cops and everyone around you are saying, well, if you hesitate, you're going to get killed. Your wife is going to be a widow. Your children are going to be, not orphans, but they're going to grow up without their real father. I get why you would hear that and think, no, it's right. The training is the way it's supposed to be. But those of us who are outside, those of us who see video of police who abuse their power against people because they think they can get away with it. No, it's a problem that needs to be fixed. And yeah, at the end of the day, the way I see it, this movie in particular, you can view it either way. You can view it as, no, only the cops on screen and referred to as dirty are dirty. Everybody else is a good cop. Certainly, like, Alonzo never does say, if you, he says, if you say something, they'll look at they'll look at the fact that you have drugs in your system as explaining why you're saying something disparaging about other cops. He never says, and none of them ever say that the like, give me a second. Oh, no cop will believe, something that Critical said about a cop, even if when it's by a cop. They never say that. And let's see, the fact that they're unhappy about, I guess it's mostly Paul, but yeah, they're uncomfortable about Jake being part of this, situation with Roger, because they're not sure he's really gonna take the money, and especially when he does say he's not gonna take the money, they really can't stand that. So, that does suggest that if he left and told people that other cops took the money, that at least someone would believe that and do something about it. If they genuinely thought all the cops, like, they happened to find in Jake, they found the only cop in the LAPD who is actually honest. Obviously they wouldn't care. That it's like, well, if no one's going to believe him, so they must, you know. But yeah, at the end of the day, it does kind of leave it up to, yeah. But yeah, I do think, it's a movie that's still very relevant. It's 19 years old by now, and police brutality is still a big problem. It's become a lot more visible since this movie, and obviously it's impossible. It's impossible to know what would have happened. You can't actually just pluck in this case, movie out of existence and just say, oh, this is how things would have been. You can only theorize. I do think this is a movie that may have helped people accept the fact that there are some really, really bad cops out there, even though, of course, it's not. Some of the reviewers point out, Serpico is also about, some crooked. That story also has crooked cops in it. That's it. As far as I recall, that's also a really great movie, by the way. So yeah, but I do think that this is a movie that helped people realize that it is still a big problem, and it told the story in a way that it, it's easier to, like, I was young myself. Um, I'm still young, but when this movie came out, I was younger than I am now, and I know that I myself, and I know other people also, who watched the movie and were more willing to listen to the idea that there were bad cops out there, because it wasn't condescending. It was told in a way that feels very real. It's a movie that appeals to young people. I don't know. I guess it's possible it doesn't as much today, but when it came out, it really it had its ear right to the streets, and yeah, it felt a lot more like, when other movies would say, there's some really bad cops out there, and some of them, it really kind of felt like it was just, really old people who didn't really understand how things worked, and they were just like, back in my day, cops weren't so violent as they are today, and, young people would hear that, and they'd hear, people talk in favor of the cops, and they'd be saying, well, we have to be this violent, and yeah, I think it's, you know, not every movie has to be relevant or whatever, but it is, yeah, it really did, and again, I haven't yet, and I'm not currently planning on it, but they did make a TV show adaptation of this in, I want to say, the year 2017 or something like that. So, clearly it wasn't felt to be complete. And yeah, in 2019 they considered, excuse me, they considered a prequel, and setting it during the Rodney King, the riots after the Rodney King trial, So yeah, it there's really something there. There's there's a discussion to be had, and every so often a movie like this will come along and provoke that discussion again. And as of yet, it hasn't led to meaningful reform of police. At least not enough. At least it has been a little while since I last read up on it. There may have been some, but nowhere near enough. And yeah, I really appreciate that this movie helped, get that conversation going and make it. Excuse me. Anyway, yeah, I do believe that is everything. So I'm not 100% certain I have said yet, so I will now. The acting in this movie, in addition to the, yeah, I don't think there's a bad performance. I don't know. I guess I've seen some say that the kid isn't completely convincing. Aloncito. I don't know. I thought he was perfectly decent, at least. Yeah, the acting is just really, really good in this. From the Oh right, yeah, and the other kid, Dimitri. I think Dimitri, the kid who plays Dimitri, genuinely gives a good performance. At the very least by child actor standards, and by, he's not asked to do much, but at first, like, at first he just hears his name called, and he walks out, and he looks, calm and comfortable, and whatever. He doesn't know that there are cops in the house, and then when he sees it's a cop, he freezes up and tenses up, And I forgot to set my phone to silent, but it didn't matter until now. Excuse me. No, I did set it to silent. Why is it so loud? Anyway, whatever. Dimitri, like, and he does walk. As the cops tell him, he walks over, he gets on the couch, but he is just completely like, he's not gonna intentionally provoke the cop, and he keeps it inside of him, but he clearly really can't stand, like, he feels like cops, I mean, to him, oh wait, let's see, it's not, no, it's not mother, it's what did she say, nephew, anyway, yeah, so it's not, but yeah, in his mind cops are bad guys probably, and he feels like they shouldn't be in there. They don't belong in that home. And I almost said his home, but I guess technically it's not. Unless, anyway, but no, he legitimately gives a good performance. I think Aloncito is perfectly fine. And anyway, certainly everybody else gives great performances, even in some of the ones, some of them have very small roles, and they're, and some of them were actual gang members and actual people who lived in these neighborhoods, and they're completely authentic. It's, yeah, and yeah, just general. It's filmed well, edited well, keeps to a great pace. I guess that is everything. Yeah. So yes, I hope you enjoyed watching, as I enjoyed watching and recording, and I'll catch you next time.